Well, y'all, I found this earlier today. Just had time to get started on this. Now, the funny thing is, I haven't heard this whole thing yet, but what little I heard, um, her research is right on the research I found. So I thought it would be interesting to make a video of this because this is what I found out too. Now, does it mean it's factually accurate? No, my research and her research, the government lies to us and they throw tricks at us. They lie on documents, they lie on this, they lie on that, they steal this, they steal that. So, can you 100%, really trust anything, especially that had to do with any type of the government? We just had to take everything with a grain of salt. Let me see if this actually shows up better. Anyway, this is not a commercial or a commerce video or any type of commercial video. It's a learning channel. I'm not an attorney, so anything you say, I say, or do is just opinion. Just take it with a grain of salt. I never look straight forward. I always look around me. And this happens to be interesting because when I was looking around me, I'd done a bunch of research, which has been a long time ago and all that, and she refreshed my memories on a bunch of stuff. Now, do I 100% agree with her? No. She's missing the Paris Treaty that we did with King George, which, since he didn't leave in a reasonable time, the treaty is null and void. So the United States of America still belongs to King George. And so the treaty was just... There's a couple of other things about the treaty. It did not actually accomplish what was supposed to be done, right? And so I don't think she did that much research of it. And that part is really, really hard. You really have to read it and read the definition of the words and understand that, the troops were supposed to leave right away. The British troops, the Redcoats were supposed to leave. King George's venue was supposed to leave right away. They still stood there a few years later, which kept him occupying the land. So the treaty was actually null and void, y'all. Alright. However, they did make a separate one, which is what they called the United States. So in the same land, they actually shared jurisdiction, not really jurisdiction, same land, but two different jurisdictions, basically is what it means. You got King James, the United States of America, jurisdiction. Then you got the United States, we the people, jurisdiction. And in essence, that's what really happened. That's the reason why the Brits on the Second War with the Redcoats came back and started wanting to take our people. Well, King George assumed that it was still his people. I say King George, but it was I can't remember who it was. But anyway, England, or the Brits, thought we're still their subject. And they can still do with all they wish. Anyway, long story. Sorry. Let's proceed forward on this.
That knows, understands, and has read the Declaration of Independence and believes it. So I went away for 10 years, and then right after the wall went down, I went to a theater, and Michael Moore, the documentarian, came in and was talking about his film, Roger and Me, and he stopped and he said, "There's someone in this audience that I came here to see. You have to go back. You have to go back. You have to march in the parade. You have to beat your drum. You have to blow your horn. One person can make a difference." And so here I am. It's taken me 30 years to get here, but not only did I have to become educated about what I needed to say, but the country had to be ready to hear what I'm about to say today. I hope by when this goes far and wide, and you're going to have to make it go viral, guys, because it's that important, I hope that our country, as we know it, will change to what we would like it to be. Before I even wrote my speech out, and I haven't done that since I was valedictorian in high school. But I didn't want to leave anything out, so I wrote it down, which I will read my speech. But before I do, I just wanted to say that when the founding fathers got together, they redefined, and you have to be very careful of these words, I hit Anita a little while ago with this business. You have to be careful of anything that's like the Renaissance. You know about the Renaissance? Okay, when was the Naissance? There was one. It was in Greece. And then the Renaissance was in Italy. Anything that has an R-E in front of it has a meaning. The founding fathers redefined the word people, because in their day and age, people meant royalty. People meant dukes and duchesses and marquises and the king and the queens and the countesses. And they redefined it to people is us. We are the people and we are the power. Whatever it is, we've forgotten it, but we need to get it back, and quickly. Okay? Our country, the United States of America, was launched with the Declaration of Independence, signed on July 4th, 1776. This is the document which endows us with unalienable rights, among them the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Foremost among those rights is the right to own property. The founders felt so strongly about those rights that they wrote, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, the only powers conveyed to anyone who claims to hold a governmental office is to protect the rights of the men and women in this country. They have to protect the rights of the people. Here's a simple test you use to determine who these people are. If any governmental officer, either elected or appointed, is exercising power over you or attempting to exercise power over you, a man or a woman, and in the process is not protecting you or your property, he or she is not acting in an authorized manner and is, in fact, not a government employee or officer, or at least those that we instituted among men. That's a pretty simple test. The founders went on to write and ratify 3 more documents: the Articles of Confederation, the Northwest Ordinance, and the Constitution of the United States of America. Those 4 documents, together with treaties, are and always have been the supreme law of the land. Article 6, Section 2 of the Constitution states, "This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding." As a consequence of Article 6, all written laws must be in harmony with the 4 organic laws and all treaties made that have been ratified. This country was forged as a constitutional republic. The Constitution at Article 1, Section 4, Clause 2 states, "The Congress shall assemble at least once in every year." Once in every year, and such meeting shall be on the first Monday in December, unless they shall by law appoint a different day. And they did amend it later to make it a different day. The founders didn't foresee the perpetual politicians making lifelong careers as legislators, representatives, and senators. The reason being, we were supposed to have a minimal number of government workers, and we really didn't need any more laws on the books than the organic documents gave us. And we still don't. Indeed, instead, greed and control consumed the governmental actors, and soon, we, the people, our unalienable rights, and the duty to protect those rights fell by the wayside and we were taken over, and a republic was pushed aside to make room for a democracy. When one listens to these politicians speak, you will hear where they believe they live. In other words, the only thing you hear them say is democracy. This is absolutely foreign to the country envisioned by the founders and is the antithesis of what the supreme law of the land dictates. The mechanism with which they achieved this takeover was done with economic control. He who controls the money controls everything. The war for independence from England was, in fact, a war against taxes. Does anybody remember that from their history? The outcry of the people was because they gained no benefit from paying taxes and had no say in what was done with those forced taxes. In other words, the founders resorted to war because of taxation without representation. King George took it all and gave nothing in return. It is ironic that 243 years later, the taxes being taken from the people make the tea and stamp taxes appear to be inconsequential. The usurpers of our republic have generated a system whereby we are taxed beyond our endurance. And just like the founding fathers, we have no representation either. You see this? This is a republic, a state in which supreme power is held by the people and their elected representatives, and which has an elected or nominated president rather than a monarch. What are we as people? What's that adjective there? Supreme. We have supreme power. We can't forget it, and it's about time we used it. You see down here in the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, the number of representatives shall not exceed one in every 30,000. Our current representation. The 2018 census counted a total of 327.2 million people in the United States. If the Constitution was followed and one representative could have no more than 30,000 constituents, there would be 10,907 congressmen. We have 435. Each representative, on average, represents 752,184 people. Is that a possibility? No. It is clearly engraved in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, that the number of representatives shall not exceed one representative for every 30,000. We saw that. If the representatives were in compliance with the Constitution, how many congressmen would we have? 10,907, almost 11,000. The representatives have proven themselves to be craftier than King George, who was thrown out after the Revolutionary War, and we as a people are left with bone-crushing taxes without representation. And yet, the people tolerate the rape, and it is rape. The people have been systematically indoctrinated and have become inured to the government taking everything for our own good. And the people's sense of well-being and security has driven them from the middle class towards the poverty line. If you are one who has suffered as a result of this conditioning, you need not enumerate the many ways in which you got here. And what we need is a way out of taxation without representation and find our way back to the republic. How did we get here? Let's lay this calamity at the feet of those who brought us here, the international bankers. Although there were many transgressions against and diversions from the supreme law of the land before 1860, the ingenious plan of starting a war between northern and southern parts of the country was the beginning and end of the republic. This must never be called a civil war. A civil war is one in which two parties fight over the same territory. This was never a civil war. It was always a war of northern aggression. We may never know exactly what started the War of Northern Aggression. Certainly we know it was not the cannon that exploded at Fort Sumter. Hostilities had developed between the North and South because of the pressures by the Northern politicians to place ever-increasing tariffs on the Southern continent. The South highly resented the taking by the North of their profits because, let's face it, it was
Okay. As far as my research goes on this behalf, Congress had $34 million disappear. And what they wanted to do is have the Southern to pay double for goods. And basically, you're going to get some things out of the North, and they're not going to give any money for the goods from the South. To recoup of $34 million that was lost, that Congress, I believe, and I'm not 100% on this, all right, that they pocketed, they stole it. So that they was going to have the Southerns to pay the whole amount back and then start all over. So that's from what my research is. All right. So from what I'm understanding on that, was really the beginning of the war, because the Southern says, no, we're not going to pay for your goof ups. Are you out of your mind? And that's basically what began it all.
Taxation without representation. The South instead gave the edict that they were seceding from the Union. In other words, they were going to take their Southern land. The North could keep theirs. This would have been a viable solution. The North could have rewritten the laws that would apply to the states in the North. The South could have and did adopt a new constitution for its land, the Confederate States of America. Both nations could have continued to prosper if operated under their separate laws. But Lincoln had orders to create a federal government that would put all the states under federal power and dictates. It was supposed to be a rather swift put down of a rebellion, keeping the South in the Union and forcing it to continue to contribute to the growth of the North. But the South put up more of a fight than was anticipated, and the war was on. War is expensive. War is extremely expensive, both in men and materials. Somehow, each side had to finance the fighting, and both sides eventually resorted to issuing military scrip. The North was called greenbacks, and the South, graybacks. And in case nobody is familiar with those, this is the front and the back of greenback, and they're named for the color on the back. On the front it says, Act of July 11th, 1862, the United States will pay the bearer $1 at the Treasury in New York. And this was done in Washington, August 1st, 1862. And the back says, right here in the circle, this note is a legal tender for all debts, public and private, except duties on imports and interest on the public debt, and is receivable in payment of all loans made in the United States. Made to the United States, excuse me. Here's a Confederate grayback. You see the grayback here with the 50 on it. On the front it says, 12 months after date, and this had a date on it, Confederate States of America will pay to bearer $1,000 with interest at 10 cents per day. And then it has the date. On the back, and here's the kicker here, 6 months after the ratification, this is the back, 6 months after the ratification of a treaty of peace between Confederate States and the United States, the Confederate States of America will pay to the bearer on demand $50. It was signed in Richmond, September 2nd, 1861. It was receivable in payment of all dues except exports. Taxes, okay? So, those green and graybacks were the downfall of this country. Both sides sold bonds to their respective peoples who bought them with gold and silver, and both sides went to English bankers for help with the transactions and to borrow money against the bonds. That was the end. So, as it is now, the banks issued money against the bonds in exchange for promissory notes to borrow money against the bonds. Bonds were floated on the promise to the bond buyers that when the North was victorious, the bonds would be paid off, and when the South was victorious, the bonds would be redeemed 6 months after the ratification of a treaty of peace between Confederate States and the United States. The Confederate States of America would pay to the bearer on demand the amount of the face value in gold. To fund the war, Lincoln issued war bonds. Those bonds became known as 1040 bonds because they matured in 10 or 40 years. To collect the interest on the 1040 bonds, a Form 1040 was instituted and the offices of the Commissioner of Internal Revenue was created right then. Okay? Let's look at a notice of federal tax lien. Happens to be mine. What kind of tax is this?
Income tax.
No. What kind of tax is this? Right here. Right over here. It says kind of tax. Kind of tax.
Hey, I'm Talon, and this is Rumpus, and I'm going to show you how to start an online t-shirt business. Let's go. First, go to Shopify.com and start a free trial.
That is a 1040 tax. You see over here under identifying numbers, you see this asterisk after the blackout? That's because I don't have a social security number. They made one up for me, and that asterisk denotes an incorrect number, illegal, unlawful number. That's what it says in the IRS manual. Nothing stops these guys. The Civil War lasted from 1861 to 1865. Lincoln died on April 15th, 1865. See any significance there? When do you get to pay the 1040 tax? On Lincoln's death day. These international bankers, they're really cute. The Civil War, April 15th, now being the due date of the 1040 taxes. The American people have been paying off the debt caused by the war bonds from that time to this. What I didn't write in here is when Lee and Grant met at Appomattox, there was no surrender. This was a meeting between two old comrades that went to the War College or to the West Point together. They'd known each other for years. They were sick to death of the slaughter, and they wanted to end the slaughter of the Americans. 620,000 Americans died in the War of Northern Aggression. So these two met, and they had a discussion, and that discussion must have gone something like this. We need to make a peace treaty between the North and South and go back to what we were. And Lee says, what about our promise? We promised to pay the debt of the South back in gold 6 months after the treaty was signed. So Grant says, oh dear, we don't have any money. We can't do that. What would we do? We can't cheat the people like that because we can't pay the war debt. That means we can't have a treaty of peace. And so they shook hands and rode away with the gentleman's agreement. That's why we don't have a peace treaty. They owed too much money to the international bankers to sign a treaty of peace because they didn't have money to pay the bankers back, much less pay the people that had faith in them and bought those bonds. We have never had a peace treaty, ever, to this day. The American people have been paying off the debt caused by the war bonds from that time to this. The American people have been held under military occupation pursuant to Lincoln's General Order in 1863. The payoffs have resulted in the following. The takeover by the government of private property. According to the government, we have to pay property taxes to keep possession of our property. The result is we do not own property. The issuance of military scrip. We no longer have money, the term we use for something of value. We are issued military scrip, which we can trade for goods and services. It's called Federal Reserve notes. We no longer have rights, we have privileges. Those privileges are government issued.
Which we actually call dollars. $100 is 100 federal note.
And can be revoked at any time. All of these lawful, illegal takings by men and women posing as governmental entities have been tolerated and upheld by the American people. We have been stripped and shorn of everything of value. This system is held in place by a system of beliefs. We believe the government is acting in our best interest. We believe if we don't pay taxes, we go to jail or they take our property. Folks, there is no government. All we have here are the powers that be. If there were, each and every government official, from municipal employees to the representatives and senators, would have taken the oath mandated by the Constitution at Article 6, to wit, I, blah, blah, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States. I think perhaps we have begun to believe that that Constitution is nothing but a piece of paper. It is so important to our freedom and our values. We can never forget it. We have to refer to it at every turn. It is there.
All right, we're going to stop it there, y'all. And I'm going to continue this. So, Diesel for We the People News. Hope we're learning something today, y'all. Bye.